Have you ever been cheated on or betrayed by the woman you loved in life? Have you ever thought about why did she cheated on you? Here is why.
Look, you see this.
Right.
Women are hypergamous, which means they mate across and up dominance hierarchies. And so if you're a male who's successful in a given hierarchy, the probability that you're going to have additional mating opportunities is exceptionally high.
That hypergamy is a very uncomfortable discussion. The idea that it defines women's sexual choices by the fact that they want bigger, better. They want someone who's more successful, someone who's higher on the social ladder than what they're accustomed to or what they have now.
Well, what women do is that, mate choice is a very difficult problem. So how do you solve it? Well, here's how women solve it. Throw them in a ring, let them compete at whatever they're competing at, assume that the man who wins is the best man, marry him.
Yes.
It's a brilliant solution. It's a market-oriented solution. It's actually the solution that appears to have driven our evolutionary departure from chimpanzees. Societies tilt towards monogamy across the world. It's human universal. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't have polygamous or polyamorous tendencies. And it's certainly also the case that ways that women gerrymander this system is that, say you're married and you have children with your husband, but you also have an affair. And so you have a child by another man. That's more common than anyone suspected. So part of the way that women solve the problem that you're just describing is they pick a monogamous marriage and they cheat with high-status guys. Now, obviously in the confines of the marriage, that's a terrible thing, but...
That's a very uncomfortable subject, though, for women in particular.
Well, it's an uncomfortable subject for everyone.
Right, but
it's a terribly uncomfortable subject.
They don't like the idea that this is a common thing, that women choose a safe man that is willing to be monogamous with them, and perhaps maybe they're above him in a social class or in sexually, and then they'll cheat with someone who is above them.
It's common, but it's not the norm, right? It's still the norm not to do that. The norm is fidelity.
Right.
But there's plenty of exception.
What are some of the consistent findings around reasons for and maybe even long-term consequences of infidelity for men and women? And this could be marriage or long-term partnership.
Kinsey estimated 26% of married women committed an infidelity at some point during their marriage. So for men, it's mainly a matter of sexual variety. It's the opportunity presented itself. I was out of town and I had this opportunity. So low risk, low cost pursuit of sexual variety, sexual novelty is a key motivation for men. Of the men who do cheat, 70% cite that as the key motive. But if you look at women, this just desire for pure novelty, sexual variety is much less of a motive. But women who have affairs cite that they're unhappy with their primary relationship, emotionally unhappy or sexually unhappy, and typically both. This may seem like totally obvious that, well, of course, people, if they're unhappy in the relationship, are more likely to stray. But in fact, it's not true for men. So if you compare men who are happy with their marriage and men who are not happy with their marriage, there's no difference in their infidelity rates. Why do women do it? It's a risky endeavor. She risks her long-term mate. It's risky in terms of reputational damage. So it's a risky thing. Why do women do it? There are two primary competing hypotheses in the evolutionary literature. One is called the dual mating strategy hypothesis, where women are seeking to get resources and investment from one guy and good genes from another guy. And originally, I endorsed it because the data seemed to support it. But over time, I became more and more dubious about this hypothesis and instead have advocated what I call the mate switching hypothesis. And so if you look at a whole host of information around why women have affairs, it's not compatible with the dual mating strategy hypothesis. So, and is compatible with the mate switching, that is, women who are looking to either divest themselves from an existing mateship or trade up in the mating market to a mate who's more compatible with them or higher in mate value, or simply see whether they're sufficiently desirable so that it eases the transition into the mating pool, or keeping a mate as a potential backup mate, what I call mate insurance. Of the women who do have affairs, about 70% say they have fallen in love with their affair partner. They become deeply emotionally involved with their affair partner. And to me, if you're just trying to get good genes from a guy, that is the last thing you want to do, is fall in love with him or get emotionally involved. but it's very compatible if you want to switch mates. That's one piece of evidence that suggests that the mate switching function of infidelity is a more likely explanation. Now, these two are not inherently incompatible hypotheses. In other words, it's possible that some women do pursue a dual mating strategy hypothesis.
Now you understand why women cheat on men. But what happens psychologically when you have got cheated on?
If you're in a relationship with someone and you trust them, then you make certain assumptions about the past, and you make certain assumptions about the present, and you make certain assumptions about the future. And everything's stable, and so you're standing on solid ground. It's like you're standing on thin ice. The chaos is hidden. The shark beneath the waves isn't there. You're safe. You're in the lifeboat. But then if the person betrays you, like if you're in an intimate relationship and the person has an affair and you find out about it, then you think one moment you're one place, right? You're where everything is secure because you've predicated your perception of the world on the axiom of trust. And the next second, you're in a completely different place. And not only is that place different right now, the place you were years ago is different, and the place you're going to be in the future, years hence, is different. And so all of that certainty, that strange certainty that you inhabit, can collapse into incredible complexity. And you say, well, if someone betrays you, you think, well, okay, who were you? Because you weren't who I thought you were. And I thought I knew you, but I didn't know you at all. And I never knew you. And so all the things we did together, those weren't the things that I thought were happening. Something else was happening. And you were someone else. And that means I'm someone else because I thought I knew what was going on, and clearly I don't. I'm some sort of blind sucker or the victim of a psychopath or someone who's so naive that they can barely live, and I don't understand anything about human beings, and I don't understand anything about myself, and I have no idea where I am now. I thought I was at home, but I'm not. I'm in a house and it's full of strangers, and I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow or next week or next year. It's like all of that certainty, that habitable certainty, collapses right back into the potential from which it emerged. And that's a terrifying thing. If you're really betrayed, you're also going to think, who am I that I could be that stupid? And then you're going to think, what is a human being that they can be that corrupt? And so not only have the fundamentals been kicked out of the substructure of your perceptions, but your notion of what it means to be you and what it means to be human might have been seriously disrupted. And you know, the thing about that is that's a non-trivial event. People call that traumatic. It's like a physical wound. Certainly if the trauma is great enough, it can produce a psychophysiological wound, because that sort of trauma, a deep betrayal is a good example, will damage your brain. And maybe you'll recover from it and maybe you won't. If you are trapped in pathological relationships and you see no way out of them, if someone who is sinking has their hands around your neck and is pulling you down, you're not obligated to drown with them. You know, there's a rule too if you're a lifeguard. How do you approach someone who's drowning and panicking in the water? Feet out, right, like this. It's like, I'll save you, but that doesn't mean you get to drown me while I'm doing it. And if it's you drown or both of us drown, it's you drown. And that's wisdom. That's not cruelty.